So this video is going to be a quick recap of my GB performance. Wasn't great, but it wasn't a disaster or anything. I ended up coming 11th place, which doesn't sound great, but it was slightly above average. If we look at the final table, you can see Delial won with 86. I should say, if you tied every game 5-5, you would have ended on 75 if you completed all your games. So Delial finished on a very impressive plus 11, following up on his also fantastic 6th place in the last GB. DJ finishes up with another very positive finish after his last one. Tezuka and Turds, who came 3rd and 1st respectively, finished 3rd and tied 3rd, 4th here. Blizzard and Wavy. Blizzard had a poor first GB but came back strong here. Wavy did very solidly in both. Addy didn't finish his games in the first one, and Dalamar really came on strong here. And then Akiyama and Chikini both had solid first GBs and solid second ones, and then there I am in 11th place. But I want to talk a little about how I got there and where I made mistakes along the way, because I actually think I played pretty well. So I had 9 open games, 6 closed games, and in open I had 3 wins, 5 ties, and a loss, which is not a dominating record, and obviously I'm a strong open player, but I think if you look at the games individually, I didn't miss many chances or blow positions. I played players who I think played their cards very well. And so, for example, my tie against Dalamar, my hand was very difficult, and Dalamar played very precisely. And I was left finding there was only one move that tied for me, I believe, on move 4, and then again only one move that tied for me on move 6. And so that position was just a nightmare to play, and I'm very lucky and happy to have escaped with a tie. I think that might be one of my better played games, actually, though, as you can see from the video, my brain was getting fried by it. So I actually don't think I was really missing too many chances. I have 3 mistakes I really regret, or I think are at least interesting to discuss. One of them I might not actually regret. But overall, I think I played well in open and happened to play other people who also played really well, and that led to a lot of ties. Closed, I think I made some mistakes, but they're hard to identify because closed is not a game where you can go back and sort of say, okay, if I had done this other thing, what would have happened? Because maybe you can check given the cards they had, but when you're playing, you don't know what cards they had. And so because you're playing against this sort of amorphous, can be anything opponent and trying to play the odds, what they exactly happen to have is something of an indicator, but obviously not a very complete one. I do think I went with these weak corner starters. Normally I'm a center starter type in closed, and I don't think I did great with them. I did get both my wins out of them, but I also got an 8-2 loss. I didn't show my final game of the tournament. That was against Dalamar. I think I did another weak closed corner and tied that one too. I ended up with a negative score on first turn in closed, which seems pretty poor showing. So I think I did not adjust well, or my attempted adjustment for moving to level 3 did not pay off at all and ended up really hurting me. Potentially. Maybe I would have done badly with center starters too, but it certainly did not go my way there. So I think I probably made some pretty significant mistakes in closed, and the main one being not having a good feel for how I wanted to play the rule set, and the plan I came in with didn't work. So my plan did not work in closed. In open, things went, as I said, mostly well. Overall, I got 5 wins, 7 ties, and 2 losses, but one of them was a 2-8 loss on first turn. Pretty tough. And so ended up coming, barely above average. So the 3 mistakes I want to identify. The first, sorry for the non-beautiful graphics. The first is against Delial, and Delial had an absolutely horrible hand against me, and I really like how he played it. I thought his move in 7 was good. I started in 9, he went in 7. I went in 1, but I had wanted to go in 1, then thought he has 7, 5, 5, 1, and 5. Looked at some other moves, not liked them, ended up going in 1, and he does make the move in 5, which, people love the line great minds think alike. I think the follow-up is pretty funny and makes it a much more interesting line, which is, but fools rarely differ. And the point is, yes, if you're both onto something and being wise, you may think alike, but also if you're both being complete morons, you may think alike. And that you're thinking alike is not an indicator that you must, be great minds. It's much easier, perhaps, for it to go the other direction. But I think this was a losing mistake. I think I have a win here, but I also think it was practically a very good move in a difficult position, and I was not capable of finding the win. I ended up looking around and then just making sure I had a tie. Ended up playing 4-7, 2-3, and 6, just with the point that when 2 and 3 are occupied, 3-1-4-7, and either 4 or 8 will capture just enough. And I was thinking about this very much in terms of paired squares, where I wanted to leave kind of 3-1-4-7, 4, 4, or 8, and I knew if I could do that, I could get to a tie. And so I sacrificed a card in 6 to force the final squares I wanted. But this was the wrong way to do it, and the move I also considered was much better, but I didn't figure out why. And I don't feel too bad about this miss. I think it's good that I considered the right move. I think none of the mistakes I made here were not casting a wide enough candidate move net, right? If there's a win you didn't see, then you're probably not, just didn't consider at all, or a good move you didn't consider at all. Then maybe you're not casting a wide enough net for moves, or don't have enough different ideas in your head such that it just isn't a move that can come to you. And in all 3 of these games, I think the improvement on what I did was a move I strongly considered. And so it wasn't a candidate move issue, instead calculation issue, and kind of, in this case, an issue of my calculation shortcuts, not being able to solve a position with the complexities of this one. So the winning move would have been 1-6, 3-6, and 2, which I sort of thought looked like a similar play to my play with 4-7, 2-3, and 6, because I saw, okay, he goes 2-3, 5-6, and 3. I play 4-7, 2-3, and 6, and I've left the 2 paired squares of 2 and 8. But one thing I noticed in my calculation was 4-7, 2-3, and 4 is a fantastic plus. That's the best thing I've got going for me. But I can't hold on to 4-7, 2-3 till the end because it's dead in any other square. So as long as he blocks 4, that card's dead. And I think this was reasonable thinking. But if I can be up enough at the time he has to block 4, I can win anyway. And so what I didn't realize was that 1-6, 3-6, and 2 can be met by 2-3, 5-6, and 3. But I can then play 3-1, 4-7, and 8. That's going to flip the cards in 7, 5, 2, and it's going to flip 1 back. I'm going to have a big enough lead that he doesn't have time to block 6. Block 4. If he plays 6, I combo back in 4. If he plays in 4, he doesn't take enough cards, and it doesn't matter that I have no captures in 6. I'll be up 6-4. So I missed this line, but I think it's a complicated line to find. Seeing the sequence of 2, 3, 8 here, when my last card is completely dead in one of the remaining 2 squares. You just have to be very specific and precise to find. I don't feel particularly bad for missing this. It would have been really cool to find. And I also think I could have got there by luck, because I was somewhat torn between 1-6, 3-6, and 2, and 4-7, 2-3, and 6. And I could have happened to pick 1-6, 3-6 as my choice, and then once he played in 3, then found the move in 8. So I could have possibly gotten there by luck. That does happen sometimes. But as is, I picked the other move, and I didn't see it. But I think, as I said, I think it's a difficult calculation in a position where there's lots of potential moves to consider, right? I'm looking at moves in 2, I'm looking at moves in 3, I'm looking at moves in 6. There are ideas as well in 4 and 8. There's a lot to consider, and I sort of correctly got to 2 and 6 were my main ideas, but didn't calculate specifically enough. So really interesting game. I like Dully's play. Obviously, him getting a tie with a really bad random here against me, he outplayed me, but I did miss this winning shot. But don't feel too bad about it. I think it's the kind of winning shot I'm going to miss a fair amount of the time, and there's not some clear fix to how I'd be better at seeing it. One thing that might have helped is doing commentary. I lose a lot of time, right? I'm slower looking at lines because I'm trying to say at least much of them out loud. and that is slower than obviously thinking them. I also spend a bit of time saying some positional stuff that I think is important, but I'm spending time talking and thinking about that rather than analyzing the position. So, one thing I'm thinking about after these three mistakes is, would I have made them if I wasn't recording? Because when it comes to more serious tournaments, I really want to play my best, and can I do that, or can I come close to doing that while recording? I think this is a move I probably miss either way. So this one I don't take as a particular indicator that I should stop recording my kind of tournament open games, but something to consider for me, and we'll see what I think about that in the other two examples. My second mistake, I think, was against Lewin, and I did end up winning the game because he had a really tough position to try to save. I think my starter of 4, 5, 5, 3, and 7 was strong, and this is a very good position. I ended up basically calculating the correct line of the game out, or what happened correctly, which is I played 5, 2, 6, 4, and 3. I took safety. I thought he would play with strong outfacing in 1. I think that's the normal move here. 2, 5, 5, 5, and 1. And I'm really proud of this. I think this was good. And before making the move in 3, I had seen that I could meet that move in 1 with 4, 3, 3, 6, and 5. And that was just incredibly strong there. And I thought that was winning. And I was correct, and I did end up winning that way, and I think it was a really good piece of calculation. But towards the end of my time considering a move, I started thinking, what if I just play 4, 3, 3, 6, and 5 immediately? I found this move in another line. It was very powerful. Maybe I can do it immediately. And I think it was the better move. I think after 5, 2, 6, 4, and 3, there are some ways to escape for him, particularly occupying 5 himself as possible, which is a weird structural move, but it just turns out that 4, 3, 3, 6, and 5, whenever I play it, is going to be really, really strong. And occupying that square immediately ends up being really important. Weird position. And again, I like my instincts. I like that I found the idea of 4, 3, 3, 6, and 5 through seeing it in a different line, where it was even more obscure than playing it immediately. And what I ended up deciding was I have spent enough more time on 5, 2, 6, 4 that I am confident it is not losing and good pressure. And 4, 3, 3, 6, and 5, I have not spent near as much time on. I have not checked near as many lines. I think it is a game decision. It is more risk to play it. And so it did turn out it was the better move. But I do think I made a move that applied real pressure. I saw the core ideas, so I feel good about the kind of candidate net I'm throwing, that I'm seeing the key ideas in positions, which is something I was not doing well when I left TTA the first time. I had stopped having good instincts and was kind of purely relying on calculation. And I think coming back, I'm getting better instincts back. I'm getting more, this is the key move, and being able to follow the calculation on that through better. So actually, I'm pretty happy with this game. And I think it was a good game decision not to play a move I had spent 40 seconds on when I had spent, 2 minutes on another move, and was pretty happy with it. And thought I had a big advantage in the most obvious line and was probably winning. And it turns out that was winning. It's just he could have done something different on move 4. This is not to say he played badly. I think Lewin played a pretty reasonable game here, but I had a very good hand and I handled it pretty well. I just could have handled it even better. But this is another mistake where I don't really have regrets about it. A perfect player handles this better, but I am by no means a perfect player, and I like how I handled it, and I think I saw the ideas. Which brings us to the one position I do have real regrets about, which is this position against Tezuka, and this was the one game I lost, and it's easy to have regrets about losses, but I have so many more regrets than that. So the main component is, I think he had a very poor hand. The cards in 5 and 7 are his, and so you'll notice there's a big left weakness and a pretty big up weakness too in the hand inherently. And I started with this corner in 1, and I saw that he could set up against it in 5, but that I would then have safety in 4, and if he then occupied 2, that I could take from 3 and be safe there too, and I thought that was winning, and I was correct. And that made going in 4 here very high pressure and a very good move. Towards the end of his think, I realized he could go 5, 6, 4, 2, and 7 and get a tie out of it. And indeed, Tezuka is very, very good and played 5, 6, 4, 2, and 7. And this is where I started doing stuff that I think are mistakes I can hopefully correct in the future, that I think are really significant mistakes that aren't just something like missed a tricky calculation in a complex position, or early in the game wasn't exactly precise but had the right ideas in mind and didn't quite sequence it properly. I think this one is a much more significant mistake, but also a much more correctable mistake. And I was mentioned something like this in one of my videos. I think one of my 1-minute matches I did a while ago versus an AI. I was giving myself 60 seconds for each move, so of course it was going to be rushed and I was going to be making mistakes. But there was one game where there were 3 moves left, and so I should be able to calculate a position with 3 moves left in a minute. And I calculated every line and couldn't find a win, and there were 7 or 8 seconds left or something, and I realized I didn't remember which lines were ties and which lines were losses. And I think 4 of the moves were ties and 2 of the moves were losses, but I just couldn't remember which was which, and I completely panicked, played the last move I'd looked at, which I had just realized, just calculated as a loss. The most ridiculous move for me to make, and I panicked low on time. Here, it wasn't quite the same panic. I think I had 20 or 30 seconds left when I made the move, though of course when you start with 5 minutes, 20 or 30 seconds can feel like, you're out of time. But what I did here was the first move I looked at was the obvious. 2, 3, 5, 6, and 2. And I realized that if he plays 4, 6, 4, 3, and 8, he has a tie. And one key point is I can't do something clever with 4, 3, 3, 7, and 6 with the plus wall, because he pluses back with 5, 4, 7, 2, and 9. And so I realized 2, 3, 5, 6 is not winning. But I think this is where I made my first mistake, because I had realized at the end of his turn that if he goes 5, 6, 4, 2, that's probably a tie in 7, the move he made. And I had realized that before he made the move, and that gives me time when he makes the move to know I'm not necessarily going to be able to find a win here. I already had the thought, this is probably a tie. Which means when I look at a move and see a tie for him, I shouldn't actually move on to the next move yet. I should make sure 2, 3, 5, 6, and 2 is definitely not a loss for me, and then have that in my head as my backup move and go to it. Because I ended up making a horrible move, and if I just play 2, 3, 5, 6, and 2, it's a tie, and he has to be precise to find the tie. He has to find the move in 8 to tie. There's nothing else that ties. And so I could have put a little pressure. I'm sure he would have found the tie, but I could have put a little pressure and made sure I wouldn't lose, and all I had to do was spend a little more time on 2, 3, 5, 6, and 2. And what happened is I started looking at other ideas. I started looking at 8. Note there are also ties in 8. 6, 1, 3, 6, and 8 is a tie. All I have to do is, the key is his position is 4, 6, 4, 3 for both 2 and 8, and I just have to make sure that I don't leave both of them open and vulnerable to combos. So 4, 3, 3, 7, and 8 is bad because it leaves me open to combos, but 6, 1, 3, 6, and 8 is actually totally fine. And if I keep 6, 1, 3, 6 in my hand up, I can go an 8 safely later, so I could even tie with something like 4, 3, 3, 7, and 6. There's lots of ties here. I think 2, 3, 5, 6, and 2 is the best of them and the most obvious move, but I moved off it and started looking for something trickier, and I saw that 4, 3, 3, 7, and 6, I'm not winning ever there. Maybe 6, 1, 3, 6 is trickier, and I look at it for a little, not that long, and I play it because it's the last move I looked at, and because I had never identified any specific move as a sure tie. I had identified it instead as, that looks reasonable but it doesn't win, or that looks bad, but none of them had I assigned an assessment to, an evaluation. And that led me to panic play a move, and Tezuka finished me off beautifully and perfectly. I played 6, 3, 1, 6, 1, 3, 6, and 6. He realized 4, 6, 4, 3, and 2 and 8 is incredibly dominant, and I can no longer play safely in 8 because I've used up my only 6 up. So he played 5, 4, 7, 2, and 9, and I'm just lost, and it's a very nice win for him from a terrible hand. But I really blew this one. I had a very good hand, and I played the opening very well. I really like how I played the opening. If I had the exact same hand, I'd do the same thing 100 times out of 100. I think this was the correct highest pressure way to play. But after his really good move in 7, I needed to identify where my sure tie was. And when 2, 3, 5, 6 was the first move I looked at in 2, I needed to, at some point, codify in my mind, this is definitely a tie. And what happened was I looked at it, realized it wasn't a win, and moved off it, and never came back to it, I don't think, or spent more time on it. And that was a really significant game decision mistake. And it's not that I calculated that badly. I missed his win against 6136 and 6, but I didn't spend that much time on it, so I don't mind not seeing a clever reply. I probably should have noticed it does give up my only card that can go safely in 8, so this is high risk. But I had thought I had a tie in 3 in response to the tie in 9. Yeah, that was bad calculation. Definitely mistakes there. But I think the bigger mistake was when I hadn't spent much time on 6136 and 6, I had spent my time on other moves to just not have a timeline in hand. And there were lots of them. And 2, 3, 5, 6, and 2 would have been the easiest one. And this is the one that most makes me think I should not record myself playing in bigger tournaments, because I do think I would have had another effectively minute or two of thinking, because I'd have been thinking faster, because I wouldn't have been speaking, and because I would have had a little more time in general from not sort of giving some opening explanations. And so this is one where I think for serious tournaments, I was thinking it would be really cool to record my whole runs. Like, if I win a tournament, like there's probably going to be an SE coming out sometime soon. If I win that tournament, wouldn't it be really cool to record all my thoughts on the way? Or if I go deep, if I have a nice run, it would be really nice to have that on record. And I think I am not good enough to do that. I think I'm going to need the time. And I also think, even aside that I have to work on my decision making in games. I think my play is good, but I think my decision making is not great. Here, I like the decision I made. 4, 3, 3, 6, and 5 was the best move, but I hadn't spent enough time on it. So I went with 5, 2, 6, 4, and 3, which I had spent enough time to realize is at least quite good to very good. This position, I should have codified 2, 3, 5, 6 as quite good to very good, and as non-losing, as at least a tie, and then moved on to other stuff. And when I hit 6, 1, 3, 6, even if I didn't see the key line, which he saw quickly, but I didn't see, even if I don't see it, I'm still never making that move, because I know 2, 3, 5, 6, and 2 is my move if I don't see a win. And I certainly didn't think 6, 1, 3, 6, and 6 was winning. So just really poor game management. Here, my game management was pretty good. Here, I think my game management was pretty bad. In both cases, I made a bad move. In one case, I turned a forced win into a tie. In one case, I turned a tie into a loss. But I hope the difference is pretty clear that I made a really bad management decision here. And I think a pretty good one there, where I knew I wasn't losing, and I knew I had a good plan against what I thought was the most likely move. And that turned out well there, and very badly here. So I felt really badly about this loss, because it just felt so absurd to lose a hand this good and a start this good. And I think if you watch that video, you can see how happy I was with the position after the move in 4, and then how totally deflated I was after blowing it. But I think there's a bunch of lessons in this one. And I think the lesson that's more an excuse, but still useful, is I probably can't record my more serious games. It's not that I can't win if I'm doing that, but I'm giving up enough equity that I shouldn't. And 2, and the more important one, is have to just make better game management decisions. Have to say 2, 3, 5, 6, and 2 is the main move here. I have to make sure it's a tie, and then I can move on to checking other stuff. And I may use enough time doing that I miss a win somewhere, but it's going to make sure that I'm not just going to throw the position away, because I did here, and I know I can do that. As I said at the start, I did that in the 1 minute game. I did that much more extremely, but it is something I can do when I feel a bit lost in a position, and I'm not finding the ideas I want to find, is I do have this tendency, and I think I have to be careful about it. And I don't know if this is useful to anyone else, but it's something I think I have to improve in my calculation, is just game management decisions, is not the actual kind of triple triad thinking. It's making sure that thinking is in an organized format where I am not in a situation where I'm going to panic if I'm low on time. I'm going to know I have a move. So those were my big takeaways from the GB. All in all, I think I played pretty decently, and the people ahead of me played really well too, and probably had better decisions in the closed, and maybe played better in the open too. Though, as I said, I think I played pretty good in the open. Lots of games where I found pretty precise pads, either to save a tie or to put some pressure on, and they found ways to save it. As I said, I think these were my only 3 mistakes, and 2 of them I am happy with, or at least okay with, and only one of them is going to give me nightmares for the next week. But I think I can fix the problem. I think I can make better game management decisions, and hopefully that leads to not doing this again. So that was my GB. It was kind of fun to have recorded a whole tournament. It was pretty tiring because I got a bunch of open games, and just playing a lot of open games in one day where you're also talking and they're 5 minutes and you're really trying to think them through gets really tiring. So I got a bit fried. I think I prefer doing the chat tournaments where it's like 1, 2, or 3 hour run and then I'm done, instead of just throughout multiple days having to really concentrate on that. So my intention is to keep recording chat tournaments, but this will probably be the only GB I ever record. Maybe I will if it's all closed, but this was just very tiring. And I'm also sad I lost. It was the first open game I've lost since the return, but really happy that I think it's fixable. That I think it's not something where I just didn't understand something important to understand or calculated something terribly. Yeah, I missed his win. I definitely had a mistake in the calculation, but it's fine to miss a 4-move win when you spend 40 seconds on something. That's just way more complicated than you're going to be able to calculate reliably in that amount of time. So my big problem is game management, and I'm going to try to work on that by making how I think more organized. So fun tournament. Also, congrats to Delial. 86 points is crazy good. That's plus 11 over 15 games. If you think about the first GB, I ended up finishing second, but the people around me, we were all around 5.5 points a game. So averaging halfway between a 5-5 tie and a 6-4 win. And then Turds got 198, which was more like 5.7, I think. And Delial's 11 out of 15, I think, is more like a 5.8, plus 11 in 15 games. So just a fantastic performance. And this includes Open, which is less likely to have extreme results. So just excellent result by Deli. Really impressive that Turds and Tezuka have finished basically at the top both times. DJ as well. A lot of people with really impressive good runs here. Sadly, I was not one of them in the one I recorded. But it was an interesting experience, and I really am glad to have something to work on in my play. I think that's useful and good.